What's up, everybody? It is Wednesday afternoon in New York City, and we shall talk about one of the great mysteries of life, carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are probably the most misunderstood nutrient there is. So people know you need protein, you need fats, but carbs, well, here's the story. In the 80s, it was like, don't eat fat, it makes you fat, eat fat-free angel cake, which got us a bunch of diabetics. In the 90s, it was like, carbs kill you, you will die. And then Atkins came around and everybody ate bacon and eggs with salt hollandaise. And now, nobody knows anymore. So, that's where I come in. Carbohydrates, here is nutrition for idiots. Protein is awesome. Carbohydrates are tricky little bastards, and fats are good. Okay? So carbohydrates, you gotta imagine they're like nuclear energy. If you use them properly, they light up all of Manhattan. Improperly, however, they blow the whole island to pieces. Okay? So, let's look at some common accusation toward carbohydrates. One, they raise insulin. That is correct. But let's backpedal. What is insulin? It's a messenger hormone that brings glucose into your muscle cell. Not a bad thing per se. So if your blood sugar goes up, insulin goes up, and then it travels to the muscle cell, sets something up called GLUT4, and then the glucose gets deposited. So if that happens, you get bigger or you recover. The problem is if that happens all the time, meaning if your insulin levels are always elevated. So imagine you have a neighbor that comes over once and wants some sugar. You're like, all right, dude, here, got some sugar. All of a sudden he comes 40 times a day. Then you shut him down, right? So that's what happens when you become insulin resistant. Okay? So insulin is neither good or bad, it just is. Now, protein also raises insulin. So it's not just carbohydrates. Also, insulin doesn't make you magically fat. So my BMR, basic metabolic rate, is 3,000 calories. If tomorrow I go and I eat all my carbs, I eat 2,000 calories worth of gummy bears, which would be about like 4 to 5 bags of this, I would lose weight, okay? So my insulin would be high, but my calories below, I lose weight. When people talk about insulin raising, they talk about the glycemic index, meaning certain foods raise insulin more than others. So like white bread or sugars, etc. But that's nonsense, because you gotta look at the glycemic load, meaning how much of that carbohydrate you eat. So if I eat 2 of these frogs, okay, my insulin's not gonna go up. But if I eat like this whole thing of oatmeal or 3 cups of it, my insulin's gonna skyrocket. Also, very rarely do we eat only one food. So let's say you have white rice, which is, high on insulin index. But normally you eat it with like, let's say chicken or nuts, etc., which would bring down the insulin index. So the insulin, that's a non-event. Then people say, well, carbohydrates are non-essential. Okay, so are planes, right? But let's say when I got to LA, you can walk or take a plane. Maybe the non-essential plane is a much better idea. In terms of carbs excel at 2 things, performance and recovery. So if you're performing, aka working out, carbs are the single best thing ever. So now we got cleared up that carbs will not make you die overnight. Let's talk about how many. So that question is basically, there's 2 very vague propositions to it. So one is, how active are you? So the more you work out, the more carbs, the more fuel you need. That makes sense, right? The bigger and leaner you are, the more carbs you can eat. So if you're over 25% body fat, you probably go below 1 gram of carbs per pound of body weight. So most of the people that work out are on a bell curve between, let's say, 8 and 18%. So for those people, there's 2 options. You either want to lose weight, aka body fat, or you want to gain muscle. So the person who wants to gain muscle should gradually up his or her carbs to 3 to 4 grams per body weight. Want to lose weight, aka fat, you should start at about 1 gram per pound of body weight, and then if you're not losing weight, taper lower as you go. Are there good carbs or bad carbs, and when should you eat them? A carb is a carb is a carb is a carb. So A potato is just 100 simple carbs strung together. As a very vague rule of thumb, the closer you get to a workout, meaning right before and after, the junkier your carbs can be. The further you're away, you want to eat more substantial carbohydrates. Overall, unless you train twice a day, that is not that important, nutrient timing. So that goes without saying. What about like high fructose corn syrup? That's a total boogeyman, that's nonsense. High fructose corn syrup is really no different than, let's say, sugar or agave nectar or honey or any of these things in its makeup, right? So maybe honey has a few vitamins here and there, but it's tiny. So again, that's a non-issue. What about, sometimes you have these protein bars and they say net carbs, right? So what are net carbs? It's a scam, okay? So net carbs, they only appeal to diabetics. So net carbs, they don't raise your insulin. But if you are counting carbohydrates, you have to count them, okay? What about fiber? It's a good question. Fiber, personally, I don't count it. It's not a carb. If you're really OCD, you can count it as 1 calorie per gram, apologies. But it's not really that critical, unless you eat tons and tons of fibers, at which point you'd be very full, and you wouldn't be eating a lot in the first place. Like the New York City sound in the back? It's awesome, right? So then what about intermittent fasting? Intermittent fasting is just a way of restricting your calories. So people say like, oh, if you eat your calories only in a window of 6 hours, your growth hormone goes up, you burn more fat. That's total crap, okay? Anything like exercise or diet cannot alter your hormone levels to the degree that it makes a difference in your body. I mean, why else would anybody spend $2,000 a month on growth hormone when they could just do intermittent fasting? So if intermittent fasting works for you, by all means. What about if it fits your macros? So that basically means like you can eat whatever as long as you hit your macros. Personally, I'm not a fan because it's a false advertisement, because if you're an athlete, you just can't eat enough junk because either your fats or your carbs will go over, right? So if you're a larger mammal like me, you probably have a little bit of space for junk at the end of the day, but that doesn't mean I can eat only junk. So like what you see on Instagram, like, oh, I ate 3 pizzas and I look like this. That's all crap, don't fall for that. So, cliff notes for the Facebook generation. Carbs are not evil. They are your friend for recovery and performance. The leaner you are, the more you eat. The more you work out, the more you eat. Where they come from is not so important. And enjoy life and get big. That's it, Maik out. Thank you for watching.